I think we have this misconception that there is successful parents and failure parents, but there's a huge area in between that. And just because your kids, the train goes off the tracks a little bit at one point or another in their life does not make you an unsuccessful or a bad parent. You did your job to teach them well. In the end, it's their life to live. They have to start making decisions on their own. And you're doing them an injustice if you're not letting them make those decisions. But in the end, it's their decisions to make. And some of those are going to be hard to watch. And they're train wrecks sometimes. But you, as a guy who loves and espouses freedom, you also have to be willing to let that freedom play out as they get older, that freedom of making choices and learning from their decisions, and then being there to pick up the pieces when it does go wrong for them, when life does kick them in the face. You're there to kind of pick up the pieces and support them and show that you still love them.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is Sheriff Mark Lamb of Pinal County, Arizona. He is widely known for his appearances on Live PD. He has recently launched his own network, the American Sheriff Network. He's going to tell us about that and so much more. You can find the link to the American Sheriff Network down there in the description below. While you're down there, tap the like, hit the subscribe button, and let's jump into it right now with Sheriff Lamb on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Sheriff Mark Lamb. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Alec.
Let's start right here. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I've got 5 kids. We had 5 kids in 6.5 years. So the oldest is 25 and the youngest just turned 18. So yeah, we got quite a few. Yeah,
very cool. I got 4 kids myself. We got 3 boys, then got the girl on the 4th try. If not, I'd have 5 right along with you. But we
hit boy, girl, and then everything else after that was a blessing. So 3 boys after that.
Very cool. Very cool. If you could, Sheriff, please just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Whoa, that's how much time do we have? No, I born and raised in Hawaii, lived in the Philippines, Panama. Went to junior high and high school in Arizona, Chandler, Arizona. Lived in Argentina. Got into business. Never thought about being a cop until I was in my 30s, and one of my neighbors asked me to do a ride-along. I owned my own business at the time. I thought, I don't have anything else going on. Went and did a ride-along. Came home that morning and told my wife, I'm going to be a cop. I was hooked. And so then I got into that. And after a while, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to run for sheriff. And so I did that and knew nothing about politics, but God blessed us with the victory and the people. I'm very grateful to them. They elected me as the sheriff, and I've been the sheriff now going on 5 years.
Wow, yeah, what an incredible ride here, Sheriff. And take us back to the beginning of your fatherhood journey then. About how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
So when I got married, I was 22. Started having kids, I think, when I was about 23, 24. I think I was 31 by the time I had my 5th kid. So, boy, fatherhood is the best thing ever. I'll tell you what, there's different stages throughout it. When they're small kids, they're a handful. They rely on you a lot. As they get older, the problems don't go away. They become bigger problems, and they actually cost you a lot more money. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Those kids are honestly, they are what drive me and motivate me. Everything I do in life is to hopefully leave a legacy for them, and if God willing, I can leave them a few bucks as well. Right now, they're only going to get debt, but we'll hope to change that. But yeah, being a father is the best thing ever. I wouldn't trade it. And being a grandfather, even better.
Wow. Yeah, very well said, Sheriff. And, one thing I focus on here on my podcast is I talk about the fatherless crisis that we have going on in our country. So many kids are growing up without a dad or a father figure in their life, and it's having a terrible result on our society. You're out there. Do you see this result? Do you see this as a result in the street? Are a lot of these violent crimes, a lot of the stuff you're seeing, a lot of the criminals, are you seeing them coming from fatherless households?
Absolutely. Look, I have kids who have made mistakes as well, and we have 2 parents in the household. And when I say this, I don't want to disparage any single mom out there, because there are women out there that are working extremely hard. And parenting is hard enough with both parents in the home. It is even more difficult when there's only one parent in the home. But I think having a male role model is extremely important in a child's life. I think that discipline is an important piece of it. I think that having a father in the home is very important where possible. Sometimes it just doesn't work. But I would say that a large percentage of the crimes that we deal with are from kids that were raised in a home where their father wasn't present. It's just the statistics. You hate a lot of our society. We don't want to talk about it. It's a little taboo because we don't want to make people feel bad. But the reality is that the majority of the people committing crimes or that become career criminals or those types of things that have issues that they're dealing with are typically where there was no father present in the home.
Yeah, good stuff, Sheriff. And I always make that disclaimer as well. It takes nothing away from the single moms out there. A lot of them doing miracles out there. But when we do look at
A
those,
lot of them did better than me. So
yeah, and a lot of it's not to say if a kid doesn't grow up with a father, he's going to become a homeless child. But 90% of homeless kids come from fatherless households, and those statistics are the same. Teenage pregnancies, teenage drug use, the stats. So, and you mentioned discipline there. That's another key factor here. What type of disciplinarian are you as a dad, and is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
Well, I grew up with that physical discipline. I mean, my dad didn't have to discipline me too many times before I was smart enough to realize I wasn't going to do the things that I wasn't supposed to do. I was an obedient kid, but a lot of that was the fear of discipline from our father. And he didn't, I never was overly disciplined. Been spanked a few times when I was small, and that was all I needed to know. And you know what? My children were the same way. I have very respectful children. I'm a freedom guy, and that's one of the hardest things to let go of as a parent. And I'll get back to that. But I raised my kids with discipline. I don't think that physical discipline is wrong. I think excessive discipline is obviously wrong. And where done appropriately, I think you discipline your kid a few times when they're young, and they'll always remember that. And I have hardly ever had to deal out any physical discipline on my children because they knew at a young age what the rules were and what we expected of them.
Yeah, well said, Sheriff. And I'm one of those guys, too, growing up that if, God forbid, I broke a window in a store, I'd rather the cops get me than my father get me. And I think we're seeing that's not the case out there. We've seen over the past year, we've seen so much of this going wrong in our communities with the riots and the destruction of property. Now, I would think, just my opinion, that years ago, a cop having a son or a daughter that wants to become a cop will be a thing that's respected or encouraged and say, yeah, follow in your father's footsteps. I would think now officers may be treading a little more lightly of encouraging their kids to become cops. Say, hey, you don't want to do this right now. That's just my opinion. How do we heal this thing, Sheriff? How do we heal what's going on right now between the police and the citizens of the country?
Well, I think it's important that your listeners understand first and foremost that what the media is portraying and what politicians are saying is not true. Statistics don't hold that. Surveys show that majority of the people in this country still adamantly support law enforcement and back the blue and respect the rule of law. We have a media, though, the mainstream media that wants to portray this disintegration of trust between the two. And it is happening, don't get me wrong. Because of the media and because of politicians spewing this stuff and spewing emotional things with no facts to support it, like, for example, crime on black men and black women, the facts just don't support that. It's actually contrary to that. There are far more white men that die at the hands of police. But what we've gotten away from is we don't want people to feel responsible for their own decisions. I can assure you that the majority of where we have to use physical force on somebody, it wasn't because we just showed up and used physical force as police. It was because we got called there because their behavior precipitated us being called or in interaction with the police. And then their behavior further propagated that problem to where use of force was needed. And I think we've gotten away from wanting to hold those people responsible for their own decisions that led up to those interactions. I got off on a tangent there. But I think the way we fix that, going back to it, is we have to start pushing back against this media. We have to start pushing back against these politicians who are trying to drive a wedge in between whether it's race or religion or creed or whatever it is. We've got to push back against that. And I'm doing what I can on a personal note. I make that emphasis because it's not in the capacity of my official duty, but I started something called the American Sheriff Network. And you can check it out at americansheriff.com, because I think it's important to give our voice back for law enforcement so that people can see the stories of these guys and the good work that they do every day, and get back in the front seats of our cars and show how transparent we are, and the good work that they're doing.
Yeah, great stuff, Sheriff. And I love the fact that you have the American Sheriff Network. I think losing shows like Live PD and Cops is terrible, because it does give us that intimate look at what's going on in your daily lives there. And I had Deputy McElwain on the show here quite a while back. Live PD, I think, was a big success. How did you get involved? What was the genesis of you getting involved with Live PD? And what did your kids think about you being on the show?
Yeah, when Live PD originally reached out, it was like right after I took office, when they were first starting off. And I was like, man, I'm like a baby deer on ice here. I'm still trying to figure out and get my feet underneath me. And we went about 6 months, got through our first budget cycle, and told my chief deputy, I said, hey, let's reach out to those Live PD folks and see if they're still interested. I was actually in Colorado. We reached out to them on a Monday while I was in Colorado for a sheriff's training. By Friday, when I got back, they were already at our agency. That's how quickly they jumped on it. We love it because it really brought our community and us together. They took pride in it. It showed transparency, and it has helped us recruit like you wouldn't believe. And like you had mentioned, why would anybody want to do this job? Well, there still are people out there that want to do this job. They're harder to find, and we need every advantage to be able to bring those people into our agency, and Live PD gave that to us. Live PD brought people closer to police. You can see a correlation of when that got canceled to now. Look at the amount of what's happened with the relationship between the communities and police. And then I think that goes directly back to the fact that they shut our voices off.
Yeah, really good stuff. Listen, I'm a big supporter of the police. I think as a father of 4 kids, I think most parents, I would agree, are supporters of the police. We need them in the community to keep our kids safe out there. And one thing, I mean, you've hit this point already here. My youngest is my only girl. She's 6. So I'm not looking forward to her getting into that whole dating scene. You've already been in this road here. I guess it helps to have a father that's a sheriff, but how did you kind of handle it when your kids became old enough to hit the dating scene?
I don't know. I'm still dealing with that, Look, I started to mention before, I'm a freedom guy. And as a parent, this is something that you have to understand. I think we have this misconception that there is successful parents and failure parents. But there's a huge area in between that. And just because your kids, the train goes off the tracks a little bit at one point or another in their life, does not make you an unsuccessful or a bad parent. You did your job to teach them well. In the end, it's their life to live. They have to start making decisions on their own. And you're doing them an injustice if you're not letting them make those decisions. So you have to try to guide them as well as you can and try to really keep them on the track. But in the end, it's their decisions to make. And some of those are going to be hard to watch. And they're train wrecks sometimes. But you, as a guy who loves and espouses freedom, you also have to be willing to let that freedom play out as they get older, that freedom of making choices and learning from their decisions, and then being there to pick up the pieces when it does go wrong for them, when life does kick them in the face. You're there to kind of pick up the pieces and support them and show that you still love them. And I think that's the key. That's what's important for parenting, is you need to be there for them when the train does go off the track, and it will. And dating's a big part of that. Unfortunately, we don't get to pick who our kids want to date or end up marrying or don't. I don't know. But, I've been fortunate. My daughter married a kid that we love, and he's been great to her, and he treats my grandson well. He's a hard worker. Couldn't have asked for more.
Yeah, well said, Sheriff. Yeah, listen, I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict myself. I've been through some tough times in my life, but looking back, I wouldn't trade it because it really helped develop me into who I am today. And I know that as my oldest is only 15, he's just about to hit all these different things. Watching them go through it, I think is going to be the most terrifying part for me. But I understand that they do have to fail in order to succeed. So that part of it, never easy. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is because I'm here in New Jersey, we just passed marijuana to be legal, recreational here. It's being popularized all over the country. As a sheriff, what's your take on legalizing marijuana? You think see it as a good thing or as a bad thing?
I don't like it. We just legalized it here in Arizona as well. I mean, you have to respect the vote of the people, and they went to a vote and the people voted it. Um, I don't like it. I think that most people don't realize the damage it does to a young brain. How much this is not like marijuana 30, 40 years ago. The THC level in marijuana today is extremely high. And the way they deliver it, their goal is to deliver it with such a high THC that it can be a hallucinogen. It can have some very negative effects on children. It can have negative effects on people as well. The majority of the DUIs, driving under the influence, that we have now are no longer alcohol. 70% are DUI drugs, which includes predominantly marijuana. You're going to see a rise in that. It is extremely dangerous. We've experienced it in our home with one, and it's not fun to go through as parents. And I'm not for it. And I would hope that parents, whether it's legal or not, will still strongly discourage their children from using or engaging in marijuana.
Yeah, like I said, my oldest is 15. He's in high school now, and now it's kind of seen as like almost as a good thing. It's encouraged almost now that it's legal, so it takes away kind of that taboo of doing it. So, like I said, I'm still trying to callous my mind for what's to come here for myself. Now, obviously, you're a grandfather now as well. Father's Day is right here on the horizon. What does the perfect Father's Day look like for you, Sheriff?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. Perfect Father's Day for me is just being able to spend it with my family, my kids. I'm very fortunate to have great kids. They're always very supportive on Father's Day. I don't know, eat some carbs, which I've been trying not to do as much lately. Spend some time with the family. But typically, Father's Day is a day you get to take stock in what you have and appreciate the blessings you've been given and the children that you've been blessed with in your home and grandchildren. So for me, it's just counting my blessings and spending some time with family.
Yeah, very cool. And obviously, the American Sheriff Network you got going on. What other kind of goals or plans do you have here for yourself for the future? We see any political runs here in the future for you? What are your goals here?
What's funny about that question is I'm already in the political world. The fact that people ask me that says to me that I actually take pride in that, because it says that I've done my job well enough that people don't view me as a politician. They view me as a public servant, which is what I am. And so I don't know. I go where God kind of leads me and takes me. And I wouldn't have told you 10 years ago, I wouldn't have, 10 years ago, I would have thought I would have been the sheriff. 15 years ago, if you say, hey, you're going to be the sheriff, I'd have been like, well, you're crazy. So I don't know. Like, I'm just continuing to do the things that I feel prompted to do. And really, my mantra is be the best you can be, whether it's in your home, whether it's in your career field. Right now, I'm the sheriff. I'm trying to be the best sheriff I can be, but I'm also trying to not let my voice go to waste. I recognize that I have a voice in this area, so I've tried to be a proponent for freedom, for the Constitution, for America, for the men and women that put on this badge every day. And I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And we hope to just have success in those things. And hopefully the people, as of right now, run for sheriff again in another few years. And hopefully they'll vote me back in. But I'm a patriot at heart. So if I feel the need or the calling to go do something else, then we'll deal with that at that point.
Yeah, very cool. I love your voice. It's much needed right now, I think, more than ever. So God bless you for what you're doing. Last thing I want to hit you with here, Sheriff, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
If you're a new dad, just hold on, embrace it. It's that funny old thing where you say, well, you don't know until you're a dad. Unfortunately, that is the truth. Until you're actually a dad, until that baby comes into this world, it is a life-changing experience. I would say be patient with yourself and your children. You're going to make mistakes as a parent. Your children are going to make mistakes as a children. But hold true to just your values. Make sure you instill that. They're watching everything you do. And so I would say push yourself to be the best you can be so that your children will want to follow in that same path. But just enjoy the ride, embrace every moment that you get, because you don't get it back.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Sheriff Lamb, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Father.
Thank you, Alec. My pleasure, and thanks for having me on.